She's just amazing. Welcome to The Great Reboot. I'm Tori Ryden. On this show, the courts are closed, inmates have been released from jail, and domestic violence is on the rise, all due to COVID-19. My guest, District Attorney Jonathan Sahrbeck, continues to work in his office. In fact, his job has grown ever more important during this pandemic. And I want to welcome you, Jonathan, to The Great Reboot. So tell me, how are things there? How are things in your office?
Oh, well, thank you, Tori, for having me. I really appreciate it. This is a great opportunity to kind of tell people about what's happening in the court system. On March 13th, the judicial branch decided that court was going to be closed on the criminal side, all except for in-custody arraignments, and that means for people who have been arrested, and also for motions to amend bail for individuals who are in custody. Everything else has been basically put at a standstill. There's not going to be any trials or jury trials, any dispositional conferences or motion hearings or arraignments on summonses for the near future. We don't know when exactly that's going to get back into the swing of things. But because of that, that's raised an issue when it comes to due process for individuals who have been accused of a crime. And we as prosecutors have to act in the interest of justice. That's what our task is. And so we have to start addressing the situation when it comes to people who are in custody. One of the things that we've been doing is a couple of weeks ago, we started taking a proactive approach and looking into individuals who are in custody and seeing if there were conditions that we could change on their bail to, one, uphold public safety, another, to ensure that person comes into court. But then again, and importantly, understanding that because the court system has shut down in many capacities, that these people have due process rights. And if they don't know when their next day in court is, we have to address that. So we've done, I'd say, a good job with recognizing who we could come up with conditions of release that are going to ensure the safety of the community for individuals at the jail, and then also in situations where we think public safety could be at risk with that person being on the street, oppose some of those individuals from getting out. Those individuals obviously do have a chance to come up and make an argument to the judge, which has happened, and the judges can make the decisions, as they always do, when it comes to how a person's liberty is at stake. And some of those motions have been granted, and other motions to amend the bail have been denied. But it's a real concern that we have. One, that people are having their due process continued, but at the same time that we're having safeguards in place to protect the community as well as protect victims.
I know one of the safeguards is that you are working with less of a staff, kind of a skeletal crew there in your office. And from the outset, it might look like, wow, okay, well, they don't really have much on their plates, but it sounds like maybe you have more on your plates because you're having to kind of step back and do a lot of analysis.
Yeah, at first, when I heard that the court was shutting down, I was thinking, wow, what are we going to be doing? But the last few weeks have been some of the busiest of my career as a prosecutor, and definitely as my time as district attorney. We've been having to adjust to what the courts are deciding on, which almost changes on an everyday basis. We've kind of gotten into more of a routine in the last week or so, but for the first couple of weeks, it was a great unknown about what was going to actually happen with the criminal justice system. We are operating on a skeletal crew here. We usually have about 50 people in the office. We're down to about 10, myself included, but we're taking the same precautions that everybody should be taking when it comes to trying to practice social distancing, stay at home if you can. And then if you are in the public, if you are out and about, make sure you wash your hands, that you take every precaution that you can, because this is a real threat, and we need to make sure that we can try to come together as a community to keep us all safe.
So anybody who's watching this and might be concerned about their particular case, or, maybe they know somebody else who they're trying to help them from the outside, what kind of advice might you give people? What would help you help them?
And that's a great question. I mean, when somebody's accused of a crime, most likely it's going to be a big part of their life for that time being. Sometimes when we are dealing with people in the criminal justice system, it's a person who made a mistake or it's a person who got caught. A lot of times, if you are one of those people that makes a mistake while this case is pending, it's really going to be eating away at you because of whatever happened and the decisions that you're making. The advice that I would give is one, be patient. We'd appreciate people having that understanding. It's a difficult ask because, like I said, I can understand the angst and anxiety that can go along with having a case pending against you in the criminal justice system. But we are trying our best to see what cases we can resolve by talking to defendants, talking to defense counsel about their clients who are the defendants, and trying to see if we can come up with a solution prior to the case coming back into court, or hoping that if somebody is in a situation where they've been accused of a crime, if they've been taking different steps to modify their behavior and show us as prosecutors that this was a mistake, that this was something that they can change their behavior and not be involved in the criminal justice system, we're welcome to that as well. So for instance, if you picked up a drunk driving charge and that's really sort of changed your life and you've really thought about your drinking and your alcohol use, to show that you've gone to a counselor and that you're taking steps in getting into treatment or trying to take different sort of measures in which you're going to address the reason that you got behind the wheel after drinking too much. Seeing that as a prosecutor really can kind of go a long way with us taking a different approach to it, to your criminal case, and hoping that we can come up with a resolution that's going to result in you not coming back into the criminal justice system.
I think it's really important to add here that I know that there are a lot of services that normally are what you had mentioned, going to meetings. So I know that there are an awful lot of meetings that have to continue daily. And so they've taken to online, Zoom, FaceTime, et cetera, taking advantage of kind of this social distancing medium. And that will also, I would imagine, count toward an effort to kind of prove to you that they're working on this.
Right. Yeah. One of the things when this whole COVID-19 threat came about, one of the first concerns I had was for people who are in recovery. We work with the drug court and the veterans court here in Cumberland County. I actually handle it personally for my office. And it's when you're dealing with people who have high risk, or they're subject to high risk and they have high needs, community and speaking out at meetings and talking to people and peer-to-peer supports are so important. And when all of a sudden those things get essentially shut down and they say, well, you can't meet in groups, you can't go out and talk to people, it can be very difficult. And so my heart goes out to people who are in recovery, who every day there's a threat out there for them, and that could be a threat of relapse. We know that relapse is part of recovery, but relapse is minimized so much more when you have those supports in place. And I understand that for opioid use disorder, that medically assisted treatment has really been talked about as sort of the standard that people are using a lot to help people get into recovery. Medically assisted treatment is effective, but at the same time, it's not the answer. You need other community supports. You need other community people or peer-to-peer programs out there that are going to be able to help somebody in their recovery. And so it's a very important thing to make sure that we don't lose our view of what's going on out there and really supporting people in recovery. And it's why I tell people all the time, if you know somebody who's in recovery, now is the time to reach out to them just to see how they're doing and make sure that they are in a good place, because we know that unfortunately when people do relapse, sometimes they find themselves involved in the criminal justice system, and right now is not a time that you want to be involved.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I'm wondering, Jonathan, there are going to be a lot of people who are watching this from other states and around the world. And I guess if you're just speaking maybe about the U.S. right now, do you think that what you're doing and kind of what you're advocating is on par with other DAs around the country? And if so, how can people reach out to their own DAs or their own court systems to say, look, this is something that I'm trying to do to make myself, better. So I'm wondering how somebody might reach out to you or others in your position.
People can reach out to me. We have a Facebook page for the district attorney's office, and people can message me there, or there's an email account that goes right to me. It's districtattorney@cumberland.org. It's an easy way to reach me if you have any thoughts on this. And there's views on both sides when it comes to what's happening in our community when it comes to who should be let out of the jail and why. And it's really something that I'm trying to make sure people understand about what's happening in the criminal justice system, but at the same time, assure people that we are taking those steps when it comes to public safety and helping out victims and assisting victims and protecting victims to make sure that they know that we're still advocating for that side of the criminal justice system, because that is the role of the district attorney. If other people in other parts of the country really have a strong stance, I would suggest to reach out to their district attorney. I think in most places in the country, district attorneys are elected positions, so they have to answer to the people. I have 276,000 people in Cumberland County who I essentially are my bosses, and I have to answer to what they want and what they're thinking. And I have to tell them to be and try to be as clear and concise to them to make sure that they know what decisions we're making here and what our role is with the district attorney's office and protecting them.
Just a follow-up question on the jails comment that you made, because I know that there have been inmates who have been released from jail. Can you tell me kind of what that looks like in your county, and how you've made the decisions?
When we are making a decision and looking into modifying somebody's bail, either the cash bail amount or if there's a no bail hold, we want to know what conditions are going to be put in place in order to ensure that that person is going to, one, abide by the law, not commit any new crimes, and also show up to court. That's what the bail code mandates for us. So we look into whether or not that person has a stable place to live and whether or not they can be put under house arrest, whether or not they're going to be supervised in some capacity, usually by over the phone, by the probation officer or somebody with Maine pretrial services. And we want to know that something is in place that is really going to assure that this person is getting the help that they need that will avoid them from coming back into the criminal justice system. If it is a case involving a victim, we make sure that if that victim does not want contact, that there is no contact, that something might be in place like electronic monitoring to make sure that that person isn't any place near the victim that they shouldn't be in contact with.
So you speak of victims, so I go to kind of a troubling statistic that I've been following, which is, when there is, well, we haven't experienced a pandemic like this, but when there's a catastrophe, when there's something horrible going on, invariably the rate of domestic violence also rises. Tell me a little bit about that. I know your background had been in human trafficking when you were the assistant DA. Not that it's one and the same, but I'm wondering, what are the domestic violence? What's kind of the tracking looking like to you? And is it just, again, we use the word anxiety, we use the word, people are freaking out. And, unfortunately and very sadly, that tends to also track with that feeling of helplessness.
Yeah, there are similarities between human trafficking and domestic violence, because the bottom line is they both have to do with power and control. And that's one of the main things that perpetrators, when it comes to human trafficking, use to keep somebody under their control in order to traffic them, to benefit off that person, either being forced through force, fraud, or coercion, being forced to work, or unfortunately prostitute themselves. And so in domestic violence situation, it's sort of the same type of power and control that really can make people susceptible to becoming victims of domestic violence. Like you said, when you have a situation where there is a catastrophe like an economic meltdown or something along these lines, which we haven't seen before, we get concerned about victims out there, because the power is sort of given to the person who is the perpetrator of domestic violence, and that control is gone from the victim. They don't have a place to go. The resources are dried up. It becomes a situation where they don't have the same sort of opportunities to take back their life and to not be victims that had been there before. And it's really frightening. We haven't seen a huge jump in the numbers for arrests when it comes to domestic violence, but that does not mean that it's not happening. It just might not be getting reported. Like I said, when we are now in a situation where shelters are full. There is a threat that goes beyond domestic violence when it comes to contracting a virus that could be deadly, that people aren't really up for leaving their house, and they might actually become more prone to stay in an abusive relationship and not call 911 and not reach out to an advocate because of that threat of COVID-19. We have seen some more protection from abuse order complaints, which is on the civil side. It doesn't become criminal unless somebody violates that protection from abuse order. But that's something that we are keeping an eye on, and we are working with our community partners here in Maine to make sure that we address that. We have fantastic partners in Cumberland County, including Through These Doors and the Violence Intervention Partnership, and then the Maine Coalition to End Domestic Violence. They are great groups that are advocates for victims and survivors of domestic violence, and they're out there to try to ensure that somebody does have an opportunity to be heard and to be helped. Because unless you're in imminent danger, which if you are, you should be calling 911 and getting law enforcement involved. Knowing what's out there, knowing what resources are there, knowing that if a shelter is available to somebody who is a victim of domestic violence is very important, and we need to make sure that those contacts and those representatives are available to people to help.
I read an article that stated that globally, domestic violence is being referred to as the epidemic of the pandemic, and that it's more important than ever to have those resources that you just mentioned Through These Doors. That's a great organization. What I'd love to know is can people find those resources right on your website? If you can, just give us some information on where people can find those resources.
Yeah, Through These Doors, there's a 1-800 number. It's 1-800-537-6066. And that's a number that anybody can call, including Cumberland County, to get connected to an advocate who can help. Through the website for the DA's office, that's through the county website. It's hopefully very easy to find. And there's a link through it through the Facebook page. We do have a lot of resources of advocates and groups that we work with on numerous matters, including domestic violence. And there should be links there that people can just click on and get connected with somebody. And you can always call the DA's office as well. We have victim advocates here who are here to help and assist. And even though there's not a crime that might have been committed at that time, we can definitely make connections to people. So hopefully somebody who is in a bad situation does not become a victim if they aren't one already.
You can only imagine, first of all, the trepidation and the fear of picking up the phone to call for help. But then you add on a pandemic, and you can only imagine that the person who needs the help might be saying, oh, I don't want to bother them. They're already so busy with a pandemic. Any words to women who might be watching right now, or men who are victims, what you might want to say to them? Because I think that would be a real concern. I don't want to take time away from police or you from doing what's other things that are really, really important.
My advice to them would be reach out. This is what we do. This is what law enforcement does. This is what the district attorney's office does. We try to protect as many people as we can. We advocate for public safety. So if you are in a situation where your life is in danger, where your safety is in danger, do not hesitate to reach out. We're all dealing with a lot of new things that we have never dealt with before, but at the same time, public safety and the interests in victims and protecting victims does not take a backseat to anything.
Jonathan, I'm curious, just on a personal personal note, what are you doing to stay positive? I mean, this is a really soul-crushing time for a lot of people, and I'm just wondering, what are you doing during all of this to kind of reinvent, how you approach life?
Well, I can say I'm very, very lucky to have a fantastic wife and a young son. So he's only 4 and he keeps us entertained for sure. But getting outdoors and trying to exercise as much as possible, but also staying connected with family and friends. Zoom has become quite a platform for us, including FaceTime as well, where we try to basically talk as much as we can. My brother has a birthday coming up on Friday, so we're all going to get together for a family chat to wish him happy birthday, and then for a lot of people, Easter's on Sunday too, and it's sad that for a day that a lot of families get together to celebrate and have a nice meal and watch kids collect Easter eggs together, they're not going to be able to do that this year, and it's something that's unfortunate. I know for the Jewish community, Passover was just a couple days ago, so that took some adjustment as well. But I think that we as a community and we as Americans, we take a crisis and we make it into an opportunity. And this is an opportunity to connect in a different way. But hopefully we're all going to look back at this time and remember those family connections that got stronger as opposed to got weaker through this pandemic.
Jonathan, this crisis, this pandemic, what, in your opinion, has it done as far as making changes that will last in your office? I mean, is there anything that you're seeing now, wow, okay, that works a little bit better if we do it this way, that had you not had this time to be able to step back and take a look would have given you this clarity?
I think looking back at when we do get the court system back up and running again, we are going to have an opportunity to sort of look back and see what might have worked, what didn't work, and see. We're not going to know exactly how our approach towards changing conditions of bail is going to turn out until a couple weeks or maybe months down the road to see some of those people who we did take a chance on, that we did allow for conditions to be in place, and they did a great job of not getting in any trouble and showing up to court. I think that could be a real change how we approach the bail system. But one of the big reasons that we have to take this step is because, like I said, when courts at a standstill, people have due process. People have those rights that are right in the Constitution that we don't ignore, that we celebrate. And we need to make sure that those are continued on and not violated in any way. So we'll definitely be able to take a look on different things on what we see. Obviously with these, like what I was just talking about with Zoom and with FaceTime, these types of meetings, seeing how they can be effective. Personally, I like to be face-to-face with somebody as opposed to doing a computer. But at the same time, there's a lot of, like I said, opportunities to take a new, fresh look at different things and see what we can do.
So Jonathan, for folks who might want to find out more information, could you please give us information on your website and any other links that you think might be useful for them?
Yeah, so our website for the office is cumberlandcounty.org/184/district-attorney. And then we also have a Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Cumberland County District Attorney. And if you need to call the office, the number is 207-871-8384. On the website, there is a domestic violence tab. And if you click on that, there's a tab for resources. And there's many resources that we have listed there that will hopefully direct you to those advocates page, and you can get more information and contact them if you need any help.
Well, I can't thank you enough for joining us. And I'm wondering, before we let you go, are there any just tips you'd like to pass along to folks as they're really, they're at home, but are there any things that you might suggest people concentrate on?
I would just hope that people practice social distancing, that they stay safe, and they reach out to any loved ones that might need some help or might need some support. Right now, there's, like you said, there could be an epidemic of domestic violence or a relapse with substance use disorder or mental health issues. There's a lot of anxiety going on because of this unknown threat, or not unknown threat, but the threat of the unknown, I should say. And so people really need to make sure that they remember that, they take that into account. And if they're feeling any sort of problems, to reach out to our community partners and really get that help that hopefully will keep them safe.
Jonathan Sahrbeck, District Attorney for Cumberland County in the state of Maine, I thank you so much for your time, and I wish you the very best as you navigate this new kind of normal in the whole court system, and personally as well.
Great. Thanks so much for having me.